Hello, everybody. Here we are on my test day that was so stressful. As you can see, I'm basically ready for bed in my old granny gown. But let's get going here with Ezekiel 32, okay? A lament over Pharaoh, it says. In the 12th year, in the 12th month, and remember their months are different, on the first day, the word of the Lord came to me, Ezekiel. Son of man, take up a lament. Now remember, that's a moaning or a crying or a sad song concerning Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and say to him, you are like a lion among the nations. You're like a monster in the seas, thrashing about in your streams, churning the water with your feet and muddying the streams. This is what the sovereign Lord says. With a great throng of people, I will cast my net over you, and they'll haul you up in my net. I'll throw you on the land and hurl you on the open field. I'll let the birds of the sky settle on you, and all the animals of the wild gorge themselves on you. I will spread your flesh on the mountains and fill the valleys with your remains. I will drench the land with your flowing blood all the way to the mountains, and the ravines will be filled with your flesh. When I snuff you out, I'll cover the heavens and darken their stars. I'll cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon will not give its light. All the shining lights in the heavens, I'll darken over you. I'll bring darkness over your land, declares the sovereign Lord. I'll trouble the hearts of many peoples when I bring about your destruction among the nations, among the lands you've not known. I will cause many people to be appalled at you, and their kings will shudder with horror because of you when I brandish my sword before them. On the day of your downfall, each of them will tremble every moment for his life. For this is what the sovereign Lord says. The sword of the king of Babylon will come against you. I will cause your hordes to fall by the swords of mighty men. The most ruthless of all nations, they'll shatter the pride of Egypt, and all her hordes will be overthrown. I'll destroy all her cattle from beside abundant waters, no longer to be stirred by the foot of man or muddied by the hooves of cattle. Then I'll let her waters settle and make her streams flow like oil, declares the sovereign Lord. When I make Egypt desolate and strip the land of everything in it, when I strike down all who live there, then they will know that I am the Lord. This is the lament they will chant for her. The daughters of the nations will chant it. For Egypt and all her hordes, they will chant it, declares the sovereign Lord. In the 12th year, on the 15th day of the month, the word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, wail for the hordes of Egypt and consign to the earth below both her and the daughters of mighty nations, along with those who go down to the pit. Say to them, are you more favored than others? Go down and be laid among the uncircumcised. They will fall among those killed by the sword. The sword is drawn. Let her be dragged off with all her hordes. From within the realm of the dead, the mighty leaders will say of Egypt and her allies, they've come down and they lie with the uncircumcised, with those killed by the sword. Assyria is there with her whole army. She's surrounded by the graves of all her slain, all who've fallen by the sword. Their graves are in the depths of the pit, and her army lies around her grave. All who had spread terror in the land of the living are slain, fallen by the sword. Elam is there with all her hordes around her grave. All of them are slain, fallen by the sword. All who had spread terror in the land of the living went down uncircumcised to the earth below. They bear their shame with those who go down to the pit. Boy, I think about all the people that are spreading fear in our land, huh? A bed is made for her among the slain, with all her hordes around her grave. All of them are uncircumcised, killed by the sword. Because their terror had spread in the land of the living, they bear their shame with those who go down to the pit. They are laid among the slain. Meshach and Tubal are there with all their hordes around their graves. All of them are uncircumcised, killed by the sword, because they spread their terror in the land of the living. But they do not lie with the fallen warriors of old who went down to the realm of the dead with their weapons of war, their swords placed under their heads and their shields resting on their bones. Though these warriors also had terrorized the land of the living. You too, Pharaoh, will be broken and will lie among the uncircumcised with those killed by the sword. Edom is there. Her kings and all her princes, despite their power, they're laid with those killed by the sword. They lie with the uncircumcised, with those who go down to the pit. And we remember Edom. Edom is Esau's line from the twins, Jacob and Esau. And Jacob bore the Israelites and Esau bore the Edomites. All the princes of the north and all the Sidonians are there. They went down with the slain in disgrace, despite the terror caused by their power. They lie uncircumcised with those killed by the sword and bear their shame with those who go down to the pit. Pharaoh, he and all his army will see them, and he will be consoled for all his hordes that were killed by the sword, declares the sovereign Lord. Although I had him spread terror in the land of the living, Pharaoh and all his hordes will be laid among the uncircumcised with those killed by the sword, declares the sovereign Lord. Wow. You know, I have a friend whose last name is Teman, and Teman is an Edomite land. So I know that he comes from the line of the Edomites. And what's interesting about that is his brother, certainly they're not anti-Semitic, but his brother, I remember, or my friend's older brother had a real problem with Jesus, the idea of Jesus. And I just thought that was interesting because Jesus comes out of Jacob's line. So I don't know, it just struck me. All right, the sword 33. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, speak to your people and say to them, when I bring the sword against a land and the people of the land choose one of their men and make him their watchman, and he sees the sword coming against the land and blows the trumpet to warn the people, then if anyone hears the trumpet but doesn't heed the warning and the sword comes and takes their life, their blood will be on their own head. Since they heard the sound of the trumpet but didn't heed the warning, their blood will be on their own head. If they had heeded the warning, they would have saved themselves. Boy, is that appropriate today, man. Decide who your watchmen on the wall are and listen to them, okay? But if the watchman sees the sword coming and doesn't blow the trumpet to warn the people, and the sword comes and takes someone's life, that person's life will be taken because of their sin, but I will hold the watchman accountable for their blood. Son of man, I've made you a watchman for the people of Israel. So hear the word I speak and give them warning from me. When I say to the wicked, you wicked person, you will surely die, and you do not speak out to dissuade them from their ways, that wicked person will die for their sin, and I will hold you accountable for their blood, because you didn't tell them, okay? But if you do warn the wicked person to turn from their ways and they don't do so, they'll die for their sin, though you yourself will be saved. Son of man, say to the Israelites, this is what you are saying. Our offenses and sins weigh us down, and we're wasting away because of them. How then can we live? Say to them, as surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, I take no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but rather that they turn from their ways and live. Turn from your evil ways. Why will you die, people of Israel? And the Lord's still asking us that today. Why will you die? Therefore, Son of man, say to your people, if someone who is righteous disobeys, that person's former righteousness will count for nothing. And if someone who's wicked repents, that person's former wickedness will not bring condemnation. The righteous person who sins will not be allowed to live, even though they were formerly righteous. If I tell a righteous person that they'll surely live, but then they trust in their righteousness and do evil, none of the righteous things that person has done will be remembered. They'll die for the evil they have done. And if I say to a wicked person, you'll surely die, that was said to me. Remember I told you when I went into the kitchen that morning early and I heard, you're walking on the edge of a razor blade. You are going to lose your life. That's exactly here what it's saying. And if I say to a wicked person, you will surely die, but they then turn away from their sin and do what is just and right, if they give back what they took and pledge for a loan, return what they've stolen, follow the decrees that give life, and do no evil, that person will surely live. They will not die. Hallelujah. That would be me. None of the sins that person has committed will be remembered against them. They have done what is just and right. They will surely live. And, you know, the Lord says he throws our sin into the sea of forgetfulness. It's forgotten. It's done. The Lord's dropped the charges. Okay. So, you know, it was a process over a couple of weeks. But when I heard that voice in the kitchen, not an audible voice, but when I heard someone speaking to me, which I know was the Lord, the first time I told you, I just said, oh, I didn't really hear that. The second time I said, oops, I hear that. And then the process started over the next 6 weeks of me getting myself to AA and coming back to the Lord after a 7-year backslide. And I changed my ways. So I get to live. All right. Yet your people say the way of the Lord is not just. That's kind of akin to me telling my teacher, I don't like this plan. So apparently a lot of people feel that way. I don't like this plan. Your way isn't just, Lord. And that's where we're faced with the sovereignty of God. He didn't run it by us before he put it into place. He didn't run it by us. It's his plan. Yet your people say the way of the Lord is not just, but it's their way that is not just. If a righteous person turns from their righteousness and does evil, they'll die for it. And if a wicked person turns away from their wickedness and does what is just and right, they will live by doing so. Yet you Israelites say the way of the Lord is not just, but I'll judge each of you according to your own ways. In the 12th year of our exile, in the 10th month, on the 5th day, a man who had escaped from Jerusalem came to me and said, the city has fallen. Now the evening before the man arrived, the hand of the Lord was on me, and he opened my mouth before the man came to me in the morning. So my mouth was opened, and I was no longer silent. Then the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, the people living in those ruins in the land of Israel are saying, Abraham was only one man, yet he possessed the land. But we're many. Surely the land has been given to us as our possession. Therefore say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Since you eat meat with the blood still in it and look to your idols and shed blood. So eating meat with the blood still in it is sort of like drinking blood, which is what pagan cults do, or we know Satanism does that to this day. Since you eat meat with the blood still in it and look to your idols and shed blood, should you then possess the land? Can you imagine if they didn't drain the blood out of the chickens and the cows that we eat? How disgusting that would be. You rely on your sword. You do detestable things, and each of you defiles his neighbor's wife. Should you then possess the land? Say this to them. This is what the sovereign Lord says. As surely as I live, those who are left in the ruins will fall by the sword. Those out in the country I'll give to the wild animals to be devoured, and those in strongholds and caves will die of a plague. I'll make the land a desolate waste, and her proud strength will come to an end, and the mountains of Israel will become desolate so that no one will cross them. Then they will know that I am the Lord when I've made the land a desolate waste because of all the detestable things they've done. As for you, son of man, your people are talking together about you by the walls and at the doors of the houses, saying to each other, come and hear the message that has come from the Lord. My people come to you as they usually do and sit before you to hear your words, but they don't put them into practice. Their mouths speak of love, but their hearts are greedy for unjust gain. Indeed, to them, you are nothing more than one who sings love songs with a beautiful voice and plays an instrument well, for they hear your words, but they don't put them into practice. When all this comes true, and it surely will, then they will know that a prophet has been among them. All right, Ezekiel 34, and this will be the last one for the night. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Woe to you, shepherds of Israel, who only take care of yourselves. Should not shepherds take care of the flock? You eat the curds, clothe yourselves with the wool, and slaughter the choice animals, but you don't take care of the flock. You've not strengthened the weak or healed the sick or bound up the injured. Now, this would be the churches that are very, very wealthy, but have a lot of poor people in their congregation that they are bilking for money. That's what this would be about. You have not brought back the strays or searched for the lost. You've ruled them harshly and brutally. So they were scattered because there was no shepherd. And when they were scattered, they became food for all the wild animals. My sheep wandered all over the mountains on every high hill. They were scattered over the whole earth, and no one searched or looked for them. Therefore, you shepherds, hear the word of the Lord. As surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, because my flock lacks a shepherd and so has been plundered and has become food for all the wild animals, and because my shepherds do not search for my flock, but cared for themselves rather than for my flock. Therefore, you shepherds, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says. I'm against the shepherds and will hold them accountable for my flock. I will remove them from tending the flock so that the shepherds can no longer feed themselves, because they're not getting anything from the flock. They don't get to sell, slaughter, eat, get the wool. They're not getting, and so in a big rich church where you see a lot of poor people in the congregation, or people of very small means, or, even, well, let's just say people of certainly not means like the pastor has, if he's removed, he's not going to get to bilk them anymore, okay? So he is saying, and it will no longer be, I will rescue my flock from their mouths, and it will no longer be food for them. For this is what the sovereign Lord says. I myself will search for my sheep and look after them. As a shepherd looks after his scattered flock when he's with them, so I will look after my sheep. I will rescue them from all the places where they've been scattered on a day of clouds and darkness. I'll bring them out from the nations and gather them from the countries, and I'll bring them into their own land. I'll pasture them on the mountains of Israel, in the ravines, and in all the settlements in the land. I will tend them in a good pasture, and the mountain heights of Israel will be their grazing land. There they will lie down in good grazing land, and there they will feed in rich pasture on the mountains of Israel. I myself will tend my sheep and have them lie down, declares the sovereign Lord. I'll search for the lost and bring back the strays. I'll bind up the injured and strengthen the weak, but the sleek and the strong I will destroy. I will shepherd the flock with justice. As for you, my flock, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I will judge between one sheep and another, and between rams and goats. Is it not enough for you to feed on the good pasture? Must you also trample the rest of your pasture with your feet? Is it not enough for you to drink clear water? Must you also muddy the rest with your feet? Must my flock feed on what you've trampled and drink what you've muddied with your feet? This would be to poor shepherds, bad shepherds, poor rich shepherds, okay? So I shouldn't call them poor as in, oh, the poor things. They know what they're doing. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says to them. See, I myself will judge between the fat sheep and the lean sheep, because you shove with flank and shoulder, butting all the weak sheep with your horns until you've driven them away. I will save, and you know what? That's true. A bad pastor can drive people away from the Lord. They've got that blood on their hands. I will save my flock, and they'll no longer be plundered. I'll judge between one sheep and another. I'll place over them one shepherd, my servant David, and he will tend them. He will tend them and be their shepherd. I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David will be prince among them. I, the Lord, have spoken. Boy, the Lord just loves David, doesn't he? I will make a covenant of peace with them and rid the land of savage beasts so that they may live in the wilderness and sleep in the forests in safety. I wonder what it takes to have that kind of admiration from the Lord. I want it, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you either have it or you don't, or if you can earn it. I don't know, but man, and I don't know if it's even vain for me to say that I want what David had in terms of the way the Lord loves him. I guess I just want to be loved, and I know that I am, and that's exciting. All right, because the Bible tells me so. We're loved because the Bible tells us so. All right. I will make them and the places surrounding my hill a blessing. I'll send down showers in season. There will be showers of blessing. The trees will yield their fruit and the ground will yield its crops. The people will be secure in their land. They will know that I'm the Lord when I break the bars of their yoke and rescue them from the hands of those who enslaved them. They will live in safety and no one will make them afraid. I will provide for them a land renowned for its crops, and they'll no longer be victims of famine in the land or bear the scorn of the nations. Then they will know that I, the Lord their God, am with them, and that they, the Israelites, are my people, declares the sovereign Lord. Remember, that means the church, too. You are my sheep, the sheep of my pasture, and I am your God, declares the sovereign Lord. How beautiful is that? Those are all promises for you, okay, for us as God's children, as the sheep of his pasture. Okay, so tomorrow we'll pick it up with Ezekiel 35. Just keep praying for me. I really was hoping to pass my test today so that I could get in front of this job, which I have an interview with tomorrow, and I'll find out if I've been disqualified now that I don't have my license, or if they'll wait for me, or what will happen. I'm also waiting for the readout from the school that will tell me, where I took my test, that will tell me how badly I failed or how not badly I failed, because let's see, I mean, did I miss half the test? Did I miss just, 5 questions under what I needed? Who knows? But they're going to give me a full readout of it. They're going to tell me what I need to work on, and then I can and when I can reschedule my test. So, I've been hearing from people today who've taken it 3 times and failed it all 3 times. It's just a hard test for some of us, because it's a lot of memorization, and they definitely go out of their way to give you 2 really good answers out of the 4 multiple choice. So it gets really, really like dicey, like you're slicing and dicing, trying to figure out what's the best answer. And you have about 4 hours to do the test. And then you have another hour and a half for the state test. So it's like, I'm thinking, thank goodness that I took it in sort of a timely fashion, because, you can only think about the questions for so long, and they're exhausting when you have like 140 questions or whatever. But, I thought, what if I had to wear a mask for 5.5 hours? I'm telling you, at 2 hours, I was falling asleep because I was getting drowsy from just breathing the same air, because the way the proctor had it was like, she's like, if I see you touch your mask a second time, you're out. So it's like, you just had to do, oh God, it was so stressful. So it was a bad experience for me, but I'm glad that I'm over it and I can create a better experience, because part of it was just not knowing what I was in for. And it's really cool that now I understand how it goes, what the test is like, et cetera, et cetera. So I can be more prepared. And it's funny because I got up on time, I slept well. I made sure I had a good breakfast. I put my makeup on. I got dressed. I went out. And it's funny because they take your picture before you start the test. And then when you're doing the test, they have your picture up in the corner. I looked like I was drunk. I was like, because I was so stressed out and so unprepared for anything that was happening because I had no idea how it was going to go. And this picture, I was like, oh my God, I look like I'm drunk. I mean, my eyes were all beady. It was awful. So, next time I'm going to have a little more insight and be able to make it a better experience, and hopefully I'll pass it then. But, I really, I can't really share the ins and outs of what's happening at my job right now, simply because I do have friends that know my boss. But, please pray for me because, yeah, that's all I can really say. I love you guys very much. Pray for me. To get on down the road. I'm trying to not feel depressed. I'm trying to not, get on myself at all or have those thoughts like, geez, aren't you supposed to be retired now? And yet you're still, climbing. So it's just hard. I'm still climbing, I still have that career path in front of me. It's like it's not over yet for me. And I don't mind working at all, but sometimes I just wonder, it's harder when you're older. It's like, oh my God, do I have the strength to keep climbing this ladder? So it's weird. So just please keep me in prayer, and I'm praying for you guys too, and I love you, and I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.